Hi, and welcome to WhyBuy Features. In this series of episodes, we're going to be taking a closer look as to how the product review videos were made. And in addition to that, we're going to be going over, some of the techniques used, what kind of, dialogue tricks can help you get the lines across, B-roll footage. So this will be really helpful if you're new to the Director program. If you're new to the channel or to the brand of WhyBuy, welcome, and well, let's get started. So in this features episode, we're going to be looking at the Fender Telecaster product review, which was done, I believe, in 2020. Doing B-roll sequences is, I think, just as important as having a really good story to tell. And the reason mainly is, it helps tell the story. But what's fun is that once you collect your B-roll, you can kind of create a little montage sequence, and we encourage that at the beginning of each of our videos because it just kind of gets people excited. They search for a video on YouTube, they see the video, and it just kind of jumps right into it. And what's interesting about how this was shot is that there's a turntable sequence that happens right at 10 seconds. And it's interesting, I put the guitar case on a stool that I had to sit on, and the stool rotates, so I rotated the case so I could get that effect of the body moving without having to move the camera. Just cheap little techniques that help give across more of a cinematic feel. Another thing too is, perspective is everything, I think, in B-roll, because you have to give the audience a view that not only is cinematic, but is also, allowing them to see what they might want to see in person. And that's, super critical when people search for product reviews, is they want to see up close. They want to see, a wide shot. They want to get more personal with the product, because if they did have it in their own hands, what would they inspect? Use your discretion. I think everyone has their own style and, techniques, but, I encourage you to think about, what would someone want to see in person, and how would they want to feel, when they're in person with the instrument. Oh man. Yeah, so right at 55 seconds, kind of at 50 to 55 seconds, so you'll see sometimes in the editing process, we cut away to B-roll that might not relate necessarily to the story that's being told. For example, here we're talking about going into a store called Future Shop and seeing the guitar or looking it up, and it's more so the store is more relevant rather than the product. But since we didn't have B-roll of the store or that moment in time, this is where you have to get creative in the buying story process, because you won't always have footage to represent what the talent or the customer in the video is talking about. So here I just, did a pan shot of the guitar because it just holds the viewer's interest rather than someone just talking consecutively, long and long. It's good to see some camera movement, cutaways to just, stuff that's relevant to the video, but it doesn't necessarily have to exactly be relevant to what the customer is talking about. If you're wondering what's giving that bokeh effect and what's, that kind of parallax, the background, that's a prime 50mm lens, and I use that a ton. It's important to note too that you might not always have the privilege of filming all this stuff, whether it's time constraint or it's a location issue that you can't travel to, but always talk to the customer or the talent. They might have a GoPro or a cell phone, some extra footage that, while it might not be as high a quality as a mirrorless camera, shooting at 1080 or 4K, you can still work with cell phone footage or GoPro footage, even if it's an older camera, because in the buying story, it lends to that authenticity of the person who is talking about the product actually filmed, at the time, what it is that they were talking about. So never discount old footage that a customer might already have. Might considerably help your product review. I've had this. So just to point out at 136 or whatever, just the dialog plate, that's really important. So there's another video that I did on the Fender Stratocaster, and I plated that shot horribly. It's just a white background, the lighting was bad. You have to really consider for what is really anchoring the video, which is the dialogue sequence, just to ensure that the plate of where the talent is talking is visually interesting. And you'll see here, you know, there's the guitar, the product we're talking about in the background. You know, there's some contrasted furniture with white cushions and a little painting at the edge of the frame at the top. It just kind of, you know, it's not a boring background. It's something that if someone wanders with their eye, not looking at me, and they start looking in the background, you know, there's still something to look at. And you know, most videos is okay to have one plate for dialogue, but if you can, you know, reposition and try and get multiple perspectives, and that it'll depend on the product, but the key takeaway here is make the plate of your shot visually appealing and interesting. So this is an important note here at 155, 156. I'm talking about a brother that I have who's, you know, builds guitars and knows a lot about guitars. Sometimes you'll have participants who have a lot of value to offer the content that you're producing, but the issue is that they don't want to participate. They don't want to be on camera. So say, for example, you have the talent, your customer, the lead in your video, but they have a relative or someone else who has something to add or something to show how they can do. You can always reassure them that they can be in the video, but you don't have to reveal their identity. You don't have to film their face. You don't have to, you know, hear them talking. You know, just to see them doing the action. You'll see in this shot here, I just did an over-the-shoulder shot. I actually had a gimbal, and it's just kind of shooting from the perspective of just behind his shoulder, so you kind of just see his silhouette, and the focal point is more on the guitar. You know, just little ways that you can get people to be involved, you know, while still respecting their wishes. So just in this last sequence that went along from, I think it was 2 minutes to 2:07, it's shaky because of that, you know, 50 mil I was talking about earlier, and even with the gimbal, it can seem all over the place. Style is, I think, very important to express yourself as a videographer, but it has to still be watchable. You know, you can do handheld footage and it's shaky, and I've experimented with both in the past where it's like on a gimbal, it seems a little too smooth, so I go handheld with like an image stabilized lens or body. And the issue is that if you overcook it, you can't go back and film these sequences over again, or at least it's going to be very cumbersome to do so. So it's always a good idea. I kind of do both. I'll do something that's stabilized, and then I'll also do something that's handheld, because you just, in post, when you're editing, you never quite know how it's going to turn out. So just something to consider. Double up on your B-roll shots, just in case the final product, you know, on a monitor editing is not what you expected. So this is really important. So we move past the buying story, which, like I said, B-roll is going to be kind of limited to what you can capture, so be creative there. But when it comes to the key features, or the favorite thing that the customer's talking about, it's so important to have this already organized in the onboarding document with the customer, because that's essentially your scene list of what you're executing in terms of B-roll shots, because we want the exact B-roll to pair up with what the customer's talking about. This is really what people look for when they're watching product reviews. I don't only want to hear about your opinion about it, I want to see it in action. So make sure that, you know, for your own sake, to save time, that it's organized, you know your shots ahead of time, and you execute based on that. Then be spontaneous and creative and try and get alternate perspectives on the day. So this is a 240, 246. This line of dialogue was terrible. Like when I recorded it originally, there was either way too much exposition or broken exposition, where I'm talking and talking and it's just rambling and rambling. And this is something you're going to come across, especially with intermediate to novice, you know, beginner customers who are talking on camera the first time. It's important that you know, we still keep the meat of what the customer is talking about, but we are clever with our cuts. I'm not a huge fan of jump cuts, just because it's a bit jarring. Some videos it can be more energetic that way, but you know, try and use B-roll to disguise where you cut points in dialogue and try and stitch it together. So when it comes to instruments, just at that 3-minute mark, I just want to point out that was recorded with a shotgun mic which was on a gimbal axis kind of floating around. And I can't stress enough how important it is to have good sound. I realize there's challenges in terms of, if you don't have a sound guy with you or a lot of equipment, but, just be mindful of, your peak audio levels. Try and use some upgraded equipment, not in-body microphones. We really want to emphasize that sound is critical, especially when we're doing instrument product reviews, because aside from the video component, sound is really all we have to convey the feeling and the passion towards the viewers. So it has to be done in good quality, and you'll see that in this video where this was recorded in ambient room tone with a directional mic. And then later, there's a sequence where I'm playing and it's plugged in, and that was recorded in a computer, and the playback was the MP3 file that was recorded. This is going to be a subjective decision in post-production, but that whole sequence just now at, what was that, 3 minutes and 50 seconds. So about 3:43 to about 4 minutes. That's a sequence of me playing guitar. Now, I'm all for demoing products and showing how they work and what they do and that sort of thing, but you really have to be the judge of when the cutoff point is, because I think that if you go too long, and personally I still think I don't like that shot, it lasted way too long. I mean, 15 seconds for playing some riff that no one's ever heard of or care about. Maybe they like it, maybe they don't, but it's all about pacing. Trying to keep it up, we're breaking up the dialogue with B-roll and interesting cinematography, but at the same time, you don't want to put too much weight in anything. Have these kind of lull periods where people start to fall off and lose interest. It's really about keeping the momentum. Yeah. So this is another point, just in terms of who you might be filming and that sort of thing. So. Sometimes you're going to be filming people who aren't experts in the subject matter, and we don't want them to be in all cases. We just want them to be who they are and, of course be knowledgeable, but at the same time, they might not know every detail and how it's applied and, all the technical information, and that's okay. It's really about conveying the feeling of what it means to own the product and how it helps people express themselves. So in this instance, I'm talking about how the string distribution on the nut of the guitar is, and I still can't even explain it today. It's not equidistant. The strings are spaced apart so that it feels more organic based on the gauge of the string. I probably still screwed that up. But my point is that even if they fudge the dialogue or they admit on camera, it's like I'm not sure how to say it, but it does this and I like that. That's fine. We encourage people just to give us their layman's perspective on something that might be very complicated. You don't have to nail the technical layout. So just on that note, at 5 minutes and 35 seconds or so, that outro, it's always important for all of our videos for consistency and branding that the introduction is, hi everybody, welcome to WhyBuy. Let's talk about whatever the product is, and the outro is, if you thought this video was helpful, please like and subscribe, show your support, and thank you for watching. We really want to reassure viewers that when the WhyBuy name's on there, we've done our homework with who we're working with. We're committed to producing top quality content, or at least as best as we possibly can, so that the experience for the viewer is quality. So every time there's an outro logo of WhyBuy, what typically happens after the fact is, extras and outtakes. So in this case, it's more playing of the instrument, which is totally fine if, sometimes people just want to hear the instrument playing and doing its thing. In this case, here I am playing some random riff along with a drum loop, and it's terrible, but you never know. This is a good opportunity to throw in extra footage and things that you might have captured and have an opportunity to put in the video. That's where you want to put them. The nice thing about us, being a startup company, we're the ones also doing the same work that a lot of you will be doing. So when you're working with us, the conversations that we're having, if you're reaching out for support, we know exactly what you're talking about. We're doing the exact same work. So, if you're ever stuck, you need advice or help, by all means, reach out to us. And well, thanks for watching this episode of Features, where we discussed the Fender Telecaster. thank you for just... It's the first episode of this. I'm not going to nail it. Okay. Thanks for watching this episode of WhyBuy Features, where we go behind the scenes on specific episodes and discuss. This outro is like way too long. I gotta shorten it up. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode. Yeah, that's better.